Let's do a quick round of intros. So, Adam, you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, my name's Adam Dyche. I manage the application security team at a company called Commerce, formerly BigCommerce. Think of Shopify, competitor. That's how you get it.
Cool. Yep, and I'm over at DryRun Security. Amir said that security sucks with AI, but that's actually not true. Not if you're using DryRun Security. Okay, there you go. Okay, hey, here is the landscape as we see it and the facts on the field. The blue lines in the back are kind of the amount of code that's getting written year over year, and that's continuing to grow in scale. And grab several different data sources here, but about a doubling in the last 2.5 years, roughly. Does anybody think that this is going to slow down or this is going to get lower? Right? No. Like everything you read in the next 5 years, this is going to triple, quadruple, something like that. At the same time, we're seeing the markers for what we call like classic risks. So think about like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, kind of the OWASP top 10 like we were talking about. That's actually on the decline. And like, why is that? And then at the same time, we're seeing an increase in what we have kind of labeled here as contextual risk. But this is like, the proxy for that is like authorization and logic. Now that's a little bit hard to discern because you have to actually pull in bug bounty data to help figure this out. Because most tools like Sneak and SimGrep and CodeQ, all that sort of stuff, like they can't figure out authorization and logic issues. That's just not in their purview. But somewhere about mid last year, kind of there's an inversion where AI, actually we believe AI will write more secure code in the sense of like less classical risk stuff will be presented in it because guess what? It knows how to learn patterns. But more contextual risk, business logic, authorization, things like that will continue to be on the rise because just like we said earlier, like humans make mistakes, AI plus humans will make mistakes. Like that is pretty much given. So this is the landscape that we see it over at DryRun Security. And Adam, you want to talk about the setup of like agents using credit cards?
Yeah, so if anyone was paying attention to OpenAI this afternoon, you might have seen a small article drop around agentic checkout. Perfect timing for this talk, honestly. So we'll begin with a question. How many of you use AI to ask questions instead of Google more on a day-to-day basis? The entire audience. Perfect. How many of you would trust AI to make a purchase on your behalf? One person. So that's essentially where the future of commerce is going. So e-commerce is now in this new space age of utilizing artificial intelligence to help make purchasing decisions. And a lot of this comes down to MCP servers, more specifically having access to catalog metadata of an e-commerce website, whether or not it's eBay, Etsy, your traditional mom and pop Lego store down the street, or your comic book store that happens to have their catalog online. So they're getting access to metadata associated with your catalog. You're then using AI to say, hey, I want to find a new t-shirt in this size and this color range within this price range. It will then search its metadata, the catalog of metadata, and present you with some options. So luckily there's still some human in the middle-esque aspects associated with it. But you then basically say, I want to select this product. It will then provide you some more details. You say buy, and then it will literally buy that product on your behalf, and then you'll all of a sudden receive an order notification email in your inbox. So the real question there is, why does this essentially matter, right? So as you've seen, OpenAI is now completely available on ChatGPT with any Etsy storefront. You got catalog information exposed. How can that potentially ruin your day with your AI agent that you happen to be either running locally or within your browser? And the fact that because everyone is now using AI on a more day-to-day basis for general questions instead of Google, you're getting more trust and more familiar with it, which means it's going to grow even further and even quicker. So it's a scaling risk, right? And it's not just a security risk. You also have the privacy and fraud aspect associated with it as well as it continues to grow. And that fraud risk is only going to compound as the holiday season comes. So in the battle with e-commerce or bots in general, we've always said bots bad, block bot. So things like reCAPTCHA, WAFs, blocking traffic from even hitting your websites to not skew analytical information, to not scrape your data, to prevent potentially fraudulent transactions from coming through an automated process for credit card skimming or essentially carding attacks. So how do we differentiate a good bot from a bad bot? Luckily, our good folks at Cloudflare are paving the way for this, specifically with cryptographic signatures associated with the AI bot. And OpenAI is kind of leading the effort for that as well with Cloudflare. There's an article. It was posted 5 days ago. Read it.
Awesome.
So real world scenario, right? This is kind of explained briefly, but you log into your agent, you say, hey, find me this product. It queries all the MCP servers that it has access to, whether or not it's Etsy, Shopify, Commerce, eBay, probably fairly soon. I'm sure we'll get an email from eBay saying, we have MCP, congratulations, consume it. And then it will rank all that information based off of the metadata that it has access to. So reviews associated with the products, the descriptions, meta keywords, etc. And then it will provide you with that output into your agent to say, here are the best options that I found for you based off of the prompt that you gave me. We're going to get there with OWASP Top 10. And then you basically say, select, purchase, confirm the transaction, and you're done. So that means you're giving your agent credit card information, potentially PayPal information. You're giving it PII with your shipping information. So there's also a lot of session handling that needs to be carefully articulated within that process.
That's great. So we'll kind of build those out real quick. So yeah, so what do you see as like the main threats that we have to face, right? Like there's the like all the assets that like can be interacted with there,
Yep.
right?
So one of the main assets, and this is something that we've proven internally, is it's fairly easy to get prompt injection through catalog information of a product if your agent is misconfigured, i.e. if you're running it in YOLO mode, for example, you can get RCE, you're going to get prompt injection. So there has to be very careful input and output handling and formatting of that data that you're passing through the MCP server to say, hey, this is accurate information. And honestly, the agentic commerce protocol that OpenAI just announced earlier this afternoon is actually a great way to go about it because it's going to be a standardized process, hopefully. And then you also have all the different actors that can be part of this. You're going to have your fraud rings that will pop up during the holiday season selling products that are priced too good to be true. So they're going to be within your price range. You're going to be like, oh, that might be good. Because how many of us have purchased something on Amazon or eBay or name your third-party marketplace here and have been scammed out of a product before? Yep, it's happened to almost everyone, and this is just gonna be another component of that. So you have to have fraud controls in place to dictate what catalog information potentially gets surfaced to the MCP server to be provided to agents. And that's a conversation that hasn't happened in a lot of places yet. Probably happening internally, but nothing's been shared.
Okay, so this is the OWASP Top 10 for LLM apps, and we're going to focus on a few of those in our talk. But you can kind of see how they follow a different type of thinking, and it's a different type of risk vectors than kind of we've been used to for the majority of our of our lives in security. Right? It feels like AppSec is always kind of the same thing, right? Like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, right? I feel like I dream about that in my sleep now, and that feels so weird. But but this is where we're heading, and this is the type of risks that we're continuing to face. So we focused on 4 key areas that we want to talk about on this. So we're going to talk about prompt injection. We're going to talk about excessive agency. We're going to talk about unbounded consumption and sensitive information disclosure kind of is woven throughout all that. So, and we're going to talk about that in the realm of having agents do all your checkout and purchasing, and then all the normal stuff still does apply. It is still relevant, but we're kind of hitting the bigger stuff here. So, all right, prompt injection, like Adam was mentioning, like this can get put inside of catalogs, but you see it in like product descriptions, merchant notes. Is there anything that you're super concerned about this, in like the high issues for you?
So in terms of prompt injection specifically for agentic checkout, a lot of it's going to be driven through essentially merchant supplied input with their catalog information. So it's going to be more of a third-party risk than necessarily a first-party risk. It'd be very similar to, say, using vibe coding to build a new web app and potentially installing a malicious dependency. That's still a third-party risk, not necessarily a prompt injection risk, but that third-party risk still exists. But in this case, prompt injection in the sense of agentic checkout is a third-party risk, not a first-party risk. And you got to make sure that you have the safeguards in place to prevent it from happening.
What about like user reviews and stuff like that? Like, how do those get treated in the catalog?
It's all metadata.
It all gets kind of merged in there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Is anybody dealing with this kind of stuff right now? Like, are you building LLM apps and you're kind of worried about this level of stuff? Got a couple hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Yep. Cool. All right. Excessive agency. Now I can be like, oh no, it's like the bot went bad and I purchased all these packages on my front door. Right. That was the joke. That's it. That's where we are on that. Okay. All right, Adam.
So for excessive agency, who all saw the OpenAI bug report about their MCP server exposing a bunch of Gmail records? Exact same thing. That's what this is in this case, excessive agency. You're essentially giving your agent too many permissions to access outside resources, right? So this is all about agent configuration or essentially tool configuration, whether or not it's an internal like tool, that AI-driven solution that you're running in-house for your company, like Make.io, or anything else that you might be running, or whether Slack or Atlassian or internal Atlassian services as well. Excessive agency is essentially just making sure that you have fine-grained permissions associated within all the tasks that you have integrated within your AI solution to make sure that it can't potentially steal all your Gmail records and send them off to Sam at Cloudflare to get data populated within some black market website, right? So just be careful about configurations, consult legal and privacy if you have any questions about potential risks around leaking potentially confidential information.
And then unbounded consumption. This looks like we're an AI company delivering services for our customers, and so we're even consumed with this or concerned with this runaway consumption, where you can have loops go bad, or you can have searches get too aggressive and try to go into agentic mode, looking at a bunch of different code. Adam, how are you dealing with this, or how are you?
A lot of it is rate limiting, and then monitoring essentially. So if anyone's familiar with like GraphQL, how you can add complexity scores to it, kind of try to do something similar within your actual calls that you're making through your agents that might potentially be GraphQL API driven. Those complexity scores will make a huge difference in making sure that you're not going to consume as many tokens as you were initially expecting to drive up additional costs. But really rate limiting. Rate limiting is going to be your best friend for absolutely everything you do, for anything API related, which honestly, when you're talking about agentic commerce, it's all API driven in the back end. It's just, you have a robot helping you along the way.
Yeah. And then this is specifically for catalog spoofing and price manipulation. We have a couple of vectors and controls here that you're looking at.
Yeah, and what this really boils down to is don't fully trust a third-party input. When you have fraud in play, you got to make necessary decisions on what data you're potentially going to allow to be interfaced with your agents, whether or not that, for example, with Etsy and OpenAI, how do they determine if I spin up a new Etsy shop tonight and start selling candles, is that instantly going to be available on OpenAI through ChatGPT, or are they going to have some form of waiting period to make sure that I'm not a malicious actor trying to prompt inject, Sam's agent or James's agent or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't know what their decision making is, and every company is going to have their own decision making when it comes to how they're going to combat fraud and what their acceptable risks are. So it's really just having a form of acceptable risk that satisfies both legal and compliance.
Yeah. Well, we do have a couple of tips here on privacy and compliance. You may just kind of I'll build these out here real quick for us.
Yeah, so really it's starting any new project. Make sure all risks and security aspects are accounted for. Loop in legal and compliance as necessary, especially depending on the frameworks that you're going to be dealing with, whether or not that's PCI, GDPR, HIPAA, FedRAMP. Just essentially make sure that your project is built from the ground up with a security architecture in place, but also with a legal and compliance aspect as well, if you're dealing with any kind of compliance frameworks that might be impacted. And we think about this, so we kind of said hey, there's context-based risk, then there's pattern-based risk, and how do we think about that? And so at DryRun Security, we think about contextual security analysis as looking at the surface, the language, the intent, the design, and the environment. It allows us to reason about authorization, data flows, side effects, and each of our agents can spit up sub-agents to look for additional truths about the system as it's trying to build out the context of knowing what's going on. So it allows us to look for flaws that you couldn't find before with traditional tools like insecure direct object reference, or even some SSRFs can be really difficult to detect. And we're looking for context level vulnerabilities. So some of the things that are available in the OWASP LLM top 10 there is also fair game. So we haven't released all the data on this, but we expect to do that pretty soon. But we took DryRun Security and compared it to some other AI native SaaS tools, to Sneak, SimGrep, GitHub Advanced Security, CodeQL. And then we just ran through individual commits on each of these. And we're trying to just show off hey, here's what we would do, have prompt injection or sensitive information disclosure, and kind of work our way through. And then just score which ones we could find and which ones we couldn't find. And we did really, really well on this. We had run a similar experiment on this in April, just looking against pattern matching tools and looking for the cross-site scripting and the SQL injection. And we saw that kind of the context-driven approach was 2 or 3 times better than the pattern-based approach. But here, all the threat vectors are all context-based, so it's it sort of feels like we're seeding the field unfairly there. But that is definitely the case. That there is a new class of tools that are kind of rising up at this moment because if you're building LLM-based apps, if you're having MCP servers, or if you're providing even data that's going to be working with those, if you're producing the catalogs or the other components to be part of that system, you need to be watching out for this level of risk, and that's we're kind of seeing that be important. So there's also we also in our conversation as we're kind of building this out, we're also discussing what kind of controls can we put in place for runtime. So because DryRun Security, we're only from code getting written to build time, but then well, how do you do it as you're going forward with monitoring observability and So yeah, a lot of the runtime controls are really going to be boiled down to scopes and human in the middle controls, essentially. Making sure that any sensitive action that your agent is taking place for you has some form of approval associated with it, whether or not that's sending an email, completing a purchase, even potentially writing a new JIRA ticket, depending on the data data sensitivity classification associated with it. Otherwise, multi-factor authentication, correct API scopes, or even a good WAF does a lot. There's actually a lot of companies out there that are in the process of building AI-centric WAFs, whether or not from startups. I'm sure Cloudflare has something. I haven't seen it. But even like Google with their Vertex AI and their Model Armor has a solution as well. And then just consistent monitoring and alerting. The more red blinking lights, the better to say red alert, please check me out, make sure this is okay. Just build context, build alerting, implement as many security controls that you would for your typical infrastructure stack or even your web application stack to basically monitor and maintain and block those low-hanging fruit items that you probably deal with on a day-to-day basis that you just want to make sure that potentially won't impact you.
Okay, so we have a few like take-home ideas here for you. Like your agents need guardrails, context beats patterns for AI type bugs. I thought you shared a lot of really good stuff around like security, fraud, and how you got to deal with like fraud and privacy and GRC kind of early on in your build process. Let's see here, and then okay, we have a few references for you. So Adam, you want to talk through yours here, and I'll mention mine.
In short, agentic commerce is here. It's going to grow even further. PayPal is getting agentic payments into play and accessing catalog information as well as OpenAI. And really, it's going to be the future for shopping in some aspect. Whether or not the trust level is going to be there in a month or in a year, that's to be seen. But it's unfortunately going to be the future, and it's going to be here sooner than we all expected. We're all, probably in the next 6 months to a year, every single one of us will say, yes, we've made a purchase using ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or name your flavor of agent here, and that's the world we'll be in. And I'm sure Amazon will have an AI shopping agent for you soon too.
I'm ready for Black Friday right now. Ready. Well, that last one we found that was today, right?
That came out today.
Yeah, agentic commerce protocol. And then I put a DryRun Security, like a report to the SAST accuracy thing, if you're interested in that as well. Okay, so do we have time for questions, or how are we doing?